Hey everyone, it's Alexander, the real Mr. Robinson. Welcome to the channel. So I finally finished my worst of 2021 movie list. It's done, it's out of the way, the bad stuff of 2021 is behind me, and now it's time to talk about what I think are the best movies of 2021, or again, my favorite, because there's no actual way to determine what scientifically and factually the best movies of that year, because that would be a very different and much more boring list in my opinion. So again, these are my picks for my favorite movies of 2021. Now, if you saw my list for the worst movies of 2021, you noticed that I didn't have any dishonorable mentions, just the biggest disappointment of 2021. The same thing applies for this list here. I don't have any honorable mentions to single out, only the big surprise of 2021, but as the title suggests, this is not a top 10 list, but rather a top 15 list, because 2021 was actually a great year for movies, so I just decided to make a top 15. Very similar to the list I made back in 2019 of my favorite movies of that year. But before we actually get into this list, I have to talk about the big surprise of the year. The one movie that I thought was going to suck ass right off the bat. Like, there was nothing at all that could convince me otherwise that it was going to be good. And then I saw it and was quite shocked that I enjoyed it as much as I did. And even though it's technically not a movie that came out in 2021, initially, my pick for the biggest surprise of 2021 was Zack Snyder's Justice League. Now, I have been on record saying that I don't like his DCEU movies. I think Man of Steel is at best average, and Batman vs. Superman is one of the worst comic book movies I have seen in recent memory. I think it is just atrocious on all accounts, and I didn't think the Ultimate Cut really helped. And despite how much of a Frankenstein mess the 2017 theatrical cut to Justice League was, I was not at all convinced that adding 2 extra hours to Justice League and just basically restructuring the movie to be more in line with Zack Snyder's vision was going to make it any better. And I was wrong. Now, I'm not going to say I was dead wrong, because I still think there's a lot wrong with this movie. I mean, for one, it is way too long. There are several sequences that you could easily cut out and it wouldn't affect the story at all. There are way too many slow motion sequences, too many music videos. There are some unintentionally funny moments. Zack Snyder still doesn't get Superman, and honestly, I like Superman in the theatrical cut better, minus the creepy CGI mouth. And the entire epilogue is just so pointless. In my eyes, that entire sequence and the line from Darkseid of, "Ready the Armada, we will use the old ways." I feel like those things only exist in this movie for Zack Snyder to secretly tell his fans, hey, can you bully Warner Brothers to let me make more of these movies and restore the Snyderverse, which I don't know. But you know what? One of the big advantages of this movie being 4 hours long is that there's just as much stuff that I liked in it. I like the camaraderie between the rest of the Justice League team members. There's a lot more context with the story. The CGI actually looks pretty damn good. Steppenwolf is a more sympathetic villain. And even though I had a big problem with Darkseid, especially with him forgetting where the anti-life equation was, he looked cool, and the voice was definitely menacing. I just wish we could see more of Darkseid in the future, but you know what? Sequel to Justice League is never going to happen. So even though I was surprised by how much I enjoyed this movie, flaws and all, this would never make my best of list for 2 reasons. One, I don't love it, and I don't think it's a masterpiece or one of the best comic book movies ever made. It's decent, it's pretty good, but masterpiece is just not in my vocabulary for this movie. And 2, it technically doesn't count as a movie from 2021, because, look, yes, it's 4 hours long, but let's really cut to the chase. It's an extended version of a movie that came out back in 2017. So the fact that I've seen this movie pop up on a few best of and even worst of lists, it just makes me wonder, are we going to count the Richard Donner cut of Superman 2 as one of the best movies of 2006? Are we going to consider the producer's cut of Halloween: The Curse of Michael Myers as one of the worst movies of 2014? It just seems that this movie wouldn't be on a best of or worst of list based on that technicality alone. It's an extended cut of a movie that came out 4 years prior, but you know what? Because I enjoyed this as much as I did, I felt like at the very least I had to mention it as a surprise. So for that alone, Zack Snyder's Justice League was truly the big surprise of 2021. And now we can finally move on to the main list, the 15 movies that I loved from 2021, starting with number 15, In the Heights. This movie was originally supposed to come out in 2020, and I'd seen this trailer so many times before the pandemic just came in and screwed everything up for everyone. And I didn't know what to make of it. I mean, it looked good. I wasn't at all familiar with the source material, but it was from the director of Crazy Rich Asians, John M. Chu. And it definitely lived up to the expectations that everyone put on it. The dance sequences are fantastic. The songs are good. It's such a feel-good movie all around. For me, it was the big start of what would end up being a great year for musicals. The cast is fantastic. Anthony Ramos, Corey Hawkins, Leslie Grace, who's going to be the new Batgirl, and Melissa Barrera, who was just in Scream 5. They're all really good, and it's just such a fantastic movie all around. Number 14. Raya and the Last Dragon. This is a movie that unfortunately I didn't get to see in theaters because at the time it came out, I couldn't get my vaccine just yet, and theaters in LA were still closed. But saw it on Disney Plus, paid $30, and unlike Mulan, this is a movie that I actually didn't mind paying that extra premium for because it's a really fun adventure film. The look of it is fantastic. It's got some really fun characters. The voice cast is great, ranging from Kelly Marie Tran, Awkwafina, and you can clearly tell that it pulled some inspiration from Avatar: The Last Airbender. Not to the same extent, and I don't see how comparing it to Avatar: The Last Airbender is a negative because, hey, if you're gonna be inspired by something, then at least you're inspired by great material. And Raya and the Last Dragon is definitely that. I like how it's not a musical, and in a way, it's kind of the movie that I wish the live-action Mulan was. Just a really fun Disney movie all around. Number 13. Luca. You might be surprised, or maybe not, that a Pixar movie is not in my top 10 list, but even when I first saw this movie, I knew right away that it wasn't going to be my number one favorite movie of the year, which so many Pixar movies have been my favorite movie of the year, but regardless of that right there, Luca is still very much a fun Pixar movie. It's got some great designs, it's imaginative, it's got a lot of great humor, and it's also very heartfelt. It's a fantastic coming-of-age story that I really wish got a theatrical release, or at least give us an option to see it in theaters and Disney Plus Premium, rather than just making it exclusive to Disney Plus without any additional charge. And the fact that their next movie, Turning Red, is a Disney Plus exclusive just really irks me the wrong way, because Pixar movies are something that you should experience in a theater. And thankfully, one of the big advantages of living in Los Angeles is that I got to see Luca in a theater at the El Capitan, which Disney owns, if you didn't know. So I think because I managed to see this movie in theaters, it makes me like it a little more than most people did. It's not one of the best Pixar movies out there, but it's certainly imaginative, creative, and fun nonetheless. Number 12. Godzilla vs. Kong. Now, I have to admit, one of the reasons why I decided to make a top 15 list instead of just a top 10 list was to have an excuse to talk about Godzilla vs. Kong. And I know the problems that this movie has. I recognize that it's not a great script, the characters don't have a whole lot going for them, and there's a lot in this movie that is just not all that great or that fleshed out, but the reason you see a movie titled Godzilla vs. Kong is to see the eighth wonder of the world and the king of the monsters beat the crap out of each other for an hour and 50 minutes. and god damn it, it delivers. The action scenes between these two monsters is fantastic. It's well shot. The score by Tom Holkenborg is fantastic. And even though Mechagodzilla was one of the worst kept secrets in terms of a movie from 2021, the big finale where he fights Godzilla and then both Godzilla and Kong have to team up to destroy Mechagodzilla is just so fun. This was truly the movie that made me feel like a kid again. It's everything that I could have ever wanted from a Godzilla and King Kong rematch, and it was also the first movie I saw in theaters since the pandemic started, and I don't think I could have picked a better movie. So it's mainly for that I wanted to mention Godzilla vs. Kong, and also the fact that even though it's not in my top 10, and I admit that it has problems, it's probably the most rewatchable movie of 2021. Number 11. Free Guy. I actually had a difficult time for a while on what was a bigger surprise, Zack Snyder's Justice League or Free Guy. I ultimately went with Justice League because I had no expectations for that, whereas for Free Guy, it looked interesting, but I didn't really know what to make of it, and Free Guy ultimately lands on my best of list because it's such a feel-good movie. By the time this movie came out, 2021 was starting to take a dive down into just being crappy. And Free Guy is just so sweet, so charming, so funny all around, so clever as well. It's hands down Sean Levy's best movie. Ryan Reynolds is just great in this role. You really like the character of Guy, even though he's pretty much Ryan Reynolds. He's just so likable that you can't pull yourself to hate him. Jodie Comer is great as well, and she has good chemistry with Ryan Reynolds. And even though I had issues with the movie, like Taika Waititi, and the gratuitous homages to Star Wars and the Avengers, even though the scene with Cap's shield did get capped off by a fun cameo by Chris Evans, this movie just made me feel really happy at the end of the day, and it's very much the movie that we needed in these dark, dark times. Number 10. A Quiet Place Part 2. This was another big surprise from last year that was so good that I had to put it on my best of list. Now, I'm one of the few people out there that wasn't in love with the first Quiet Place. It had a great concept, but I thought the ending was just very lackluster. With the sequel, now that I know what to expect, I was fully on board, and it manages to be a sequel that's much better than the original. It's very tense, it's nerve-wracking, it is a true horror movie, and I like how it really doesn't abuse the novelty of the first movie, and it actually is a full-on continuation and advances the story. The CGI on those monsters looks a lot better than in the first Quiet Place movie, and the way this movie ends gives this world a very big shining beacon of hope that makes me excited to see the third chapter. Like, they have to make a third movie sooner than later because I want to see how this story ends. Number 9. Encanto. This is Disney's 60th animated feature, and it's another grand slam from them. It's got beautiful animation, fantastic songs from Lin-Manuel Miranda, who has been on a roll this year, especially when it comes to the song We Don't Talk About Bruno, which actually I was quite shocked that this is the song that's been getting the most attention from Encanto, but hey, it's a good song nonetheless. And what really makes this movie work for me is the story about how just because you might not have any special abilities or just kind of average, that doesn't mean you don't have any worth. And that's a really inspiring message. Stephanie Beatrice is great in the lead role, and all the side characters are memorable and tons of fun as well. I also like how this movie doesn't have a straightforward villain like most Disney movies do. 2021 was certainly a great year for Disney animation, and I feel like I've earned the right to say that considering that I reviewed every single Disney animated movie in 2021. But you know what? Moving on. Number 8. The Night House, my favorite horror movie of 2021, and surprise, surprise, another surprising film from that year. This is one that I feel like more people should be talking about, and I'm really disappointed that it's not getting as much love as it quite frankly should, because it's a very creepy, well done, and haunting ghost movie. Rebecca Hall is absolutely fantastic. Like, this really has been Rebecca Hall's year. I still haven't seen her directorial debut passing, but between that movie, Godzilla vs. Kong, and this, she has definitely had a great year, and this is probably one of, if not her best performances. Having to juggle so many different types of emotions, considering the character's story, is truly a testament to how great of an actress Rebecca Hall is, and why she should be in more leading roles. It's scary, it's got a fantastic atmosphere, and I really love the ending. In my original review, I couldn't say what that was to avoid spoilers, but basically, I thought the movie was going to end very similar to how Lights Out ended, where Rebecca Hall's character was basically going to commit suicide to end this string of hauntings. And if she had done that, this would have been an absolute disappointment for me. I probably would have put it on my biggest disappointment list, or maybe not the worst of list, but regardless, I'm happy that the movie didn't go that route. And the result is, again, my favorite horror movie of 2021. Number 7. The Suicide Squad. Talk about a complete 180 in terms of a sequel. That first movie from 2016 is often regarded as one of the worst DC Extended Universe films and made tons of worst of lists, including my own. But this sequel, directed by James Gunn, really was what that first movie should have been. It's bright and colorful, the humor is there, and much like with the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, James Gunn managed to take all these characters that are pretty much misfits, outcasts, and just weird all around, and managed to make us care about them. The cast is great, the comedy is spot on, the action's fantastic, and that big finale with Starro, as a giant monster movie fan, that really was a treat to watch. And it really does prove, more than anything, that my favorite DC properties now are the R-rated comedies, whether it's this, Birds of Prey, the Harley Quinn animated series, or Peacemaker, which I am loving right now. So, DC, keep on coming. Keep bringing us more R-rated superhero comedies, because you are definitely an expert in that subgenre. Number 6. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. This is probably one of the better superhero origin stories that we've gotten in a long time, maybe since the first Iron Man. This was one of the MCU movies from Phase 4 that I was looking forward to the most, because I always like seeing movies based off new characters, and Shang-Chi definitely delivered. For me, this is very much the anti-Snake Eyes, where both movies have an Asian lead, and the action scenes are very much rooted and inspired by old martial arts films. But whereas Snake Eyes managed to be boring as hell and poorly edited and filmed, Shang-Chi is exciting. The action scenes and choreography is just outright phenomenal. The fact that Simu Liu does a lot of the action scenes himself is pretty impressive. I like Shang-Chi as a character, and the movie has a really great villain with Tony Leung as the real Mandarin. And the hero-villain dynamic is probably the best in a comic book movie since Black Panther with T'Challa and Killmonger. And much like with The Suicide Squad, the ending just made this fan of giant movie monsters very much excited, except this time you had two giant monsters fighting each other. And it's just a great Marvel movie all around. I can't wait to see more of Shang-Chi in the MCU. The only downside with this movie is that it's not the best MCU film of 2021. No, that honor goes to... Number 5. Spider-Man No Way Home. Even though I really loved Homecoming and liked Far From Home, No Way Home was a movie that I for a while pretended didn't exist, because it seemed like everyone was just so obsessed with every little detail about this movie, whether it was confirmed or whether it was a rumor, that it made me just want to forget about this movie until it actually came out. And when it came out, it really did deliver. It is the best live-action Spider-Man movie. It's a perfect capper to this home trilogy of MCU Spider-Man films. And even though the internet pretty much predicted everything that would happen with this movie, Charlie Cox popping up as Matt Murdock, Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield reprising their roles as Peter Parker from their initial Spider-Man series, The movie's still a lot of fun regardless. I don't want to go into much more detail about this movie because I still plan to do a spoiler review, and I'll probably do that when this movie gets released digitally, but I'll just wrap things up by saying that it's a fantastic Spider-Man movie. It's heartfelt, it's emotional, it can be very dark at points, and it shows why Peter Parker is one of my favorite comic book characters out there, right next to Steve Rogers' Captain America. And it really does make me excited for what the future holds with Tom Holland as Spider-Man. Number 4. CODA. This is a movie that came out as far back as August. It was a Sundance movie, but it didn't get released until August, and I just missed it until November. And I'm rather disappointed that I saw this movie as late as I did, because it's a really great coming-of-age movie with some terrific performances. The cast is fantastic, and it's a true feel-good movie. I really do like coming-of-age movies, and this is definitely one of the more unique ones, and I think is right up there with other great coming-of-age movies in recent years, like Lady Bird and Booksmart, but this is a much more dramatic movie than those two. So if you haven't seen CODA, please check it out. And like I said in my review, I really hope that this gets some attention from the Academy Awards, because it truly is one of the best of 2021. Number 3. Tick, Tick, Boom, another fantastic musical from 2021, and the directorial debut of Lin-Manuel Miranda, and for his first feature film, he knocks it out of the park. There's so much energy going into this movie in terms of its direction, its editing. Andrew Garfield is fantastic, and he's my pick to win Best Actor at the Oscars. He's gonna get nominated. I know the nominations haven't come out yet, but come on, we know he's getting a nomination. The rest of the cast is great, the musical numbers are fantastic, and I found myself invested in the story about an artist who is hitting 30, but doesn't feel like he really accomplished anything, and you see his struggles on wanting to try to get something out there and just make it big. I really love this movie, and again, a truly great year for musicals. Number 2. The Mitchells vs. the Machines, aka the best animated movie of 2021. This hits all the same beats as the Lego Movie and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and reminds me of why I loved those movies originally. The animation is unique, it's creative, it's bizarre, I love the art style, the characters are a ton of fun, it's very humorous, it's action-packed, and it's just overall very inspiring. And much like with Tick, Tick, Boom, I found myself invested in this story about a weirdo who's heading off to college to study film, and while she's reluctant to go on this road trip with her parents, she ends up having a really good time. And it's something that we can all relate to. I mean, putting all the killer robot stuff aside, like I said in my review, when you're like in your late teens heading off to college, you kind of want to distance yourself from your parents and be all independent, but at the end of the day, they love you. They love you, and they're trying to do their best to show how much they love you, and they're not going to be around forever. So it was a really touching movie. I just wish I saw it in theaters. Even though I didn't have a chance to see this movie in theaters, I'm so happy that it actually got a Blu-ray release, because when it comes to Netflix movies, unless it's the Criterion Collection, usually they don't get physical releases, but I'm happy this is one that did get a release. And now we come to the number 1 movie. Now, before I get into the number 1, I just have to say that whenever I make the thumbnails for my best of and worst of lists, I usually try to leave out the number 1 movie, just to give you guys a little suspense and wonder, what's the number 1 gonna be? But sometimes, when I absolutely hate, or in this case, love a movie, I just feel like I have to put it in the thumbnail. Yes, it might make the list feel anticlimactic, because you just look at that thumbnail, and when you get to the number 1 movie, you're thinking, there's one movie that's featured in that thumbnail that he didn't talk about, and that's very much the case with this year. So, without further ado, number 1. West Side Story. I loved that original 1961 movie, and was so nervous about the idea of Steven Spielberg remaking that film, or at least doing another adaptation of West Side Story, because I thought, how can you top that original film? And the biggest compliment that I can give to this version of West Side Story is that he did the impossible. He made a version of West Side Story that is better than the 1961 original, with fantastic dancing sequences, amazing cinematography, great performances all across the board. I mean, I like Ansel Elgort in this movie more than others, but he is admittedly the weakest aspect of the movie. But everyone else is at the top of their game. Rachel Zegler is incredible as Maria. Ariana DeBose is gonna win Best Supporting Actress as Anita. David Alvarez is good as Bernardo. And Mike Feist, who I sadly didn't mention in my original review, is great as Riff and gives that character a level of intimidation that, as great as Russ Tamblyn was in that original West Side Story, he couldn't give. And it's just amazing. Like, I was amazed and shocked that this movie ended up being as great as it was. The movie left me an emotional mess at the end, just like the original West Side Story. And it really is my favorite movie of 2021. When I reviewed this movie, I mentioned how I didn't want people asking me to readjust my top 100 list, considering that the original movie is in my top 40, and this is better than that. And then somebody commented by saying, why don't you just make it a tie? And I think I'll do just that. So at number 33 in my top 100 list of favorite movies of all time is both the 1961 West Side Story and the 2021 Steven Spielberg version, although I like the Steven Spielberg version a lot better. This is obviously going to be a big Oscar contender. I feel like Power of the Dog is actually on track to win Best Picture, but I'm on Team West Side Story. If this movie wins Best Picture, then I will be so happy, because it really is my favorite movie of 2021, and it's certainly going to stick around for one of my favorite movies of the decade. And there you go. Those are my picks for my favorite movies of 2021. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for your patience as I work to get this and the worst of lists out. And now I want to know what you guys think about this list, and what are your favorite movies from 2021? Whatever they may be, let me know in the comments below. And until next time, this is the real Mr. Robinson telling you there is only one. Hello everyone, I just want to say thank you all for watching my list for my favorite movies of 2021. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell button to get notifications. Don't forget to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, go subscribe to my theme park channel, and support me on Patreon. I'll see you guys in the next video, but until then, have a good day, and take care of yourselves.